starting, everybody just says, oh, you're like Chinua Achebe, right? And now what I get quite often is, she's the next Chinua Achebe. And I love and deeply respect Chinua Achebe's work. His work is actually, he's the writer who's the most important to me in many ways. But also I find myself feeling very ambivalent about this, because I say, you know, while I deeply respect this man, I want to be Chimamanda Adichie. I don't want to be Chinua Achebe. And he's done his work and continues to do his work. And mine is quite different. And I you know, I have my own agendas and my own thing that I want to do. And so I suppose the answer to your question would be, Chinua Achebe is the writer who's most important to me, because his work gave me permission to write in many ways. Until I read him, I did not know I could write about people like me. I was writing about English people in England, because all the books I was reading was about English people in England. And also the fact that in some ways his work, particularly his novels, Arrow of God and Things Fall Apart, have become not just literature for me, they've become history. And I think, again, because of our very interesting, when I say I mean sort of many colonized parts of the world, that we then adopted education systems that weren't necessarily about us. And so in school you learn about the English kings and queens, but nobody really teaches you about, you know, pre-colonial Nigeria. And in some ways Chinua Achebe's book then became history for me, and so it's very close to my heart. His style I also admire. He has, speaking of English, he does things with English. He writes in an English that I think is sort of unapologetically Nigerian, which I respect. And but there are lots of writers whose work I mean, I love language. I'm very interested in writers who care about language, who, you know, and I guess an example would be, and they're quite varied. There's an Irish writer called Colum McCann, who I think is fantastic, who does, I actually find that I'm very drawn to Irish writing, I suppose because there's a sort of very strong poetic sort of fusion in Irish fiction. I like Seamus Dean, the Irish writer. I think it's a little overly obvious to say Joyce, most of whose books I haven't even finished, so I won't. So, you know, there are really many writers. I just find that I'm drawn to good language. And, but also at the same time, I hope I never write like them. There are times when I'm writing fiction, I decide not to read fiction, because I worry that, so I start reading non-fiction instead, because I worry, I try not to read people who are too stylish in their sentences, because I'm worried that I'm going to start sounding like them without meaning to. Right.
There's one sentence in your book that made me laugh out loud, and that's where the houseboy is standing outside his master's conversation with all these intellectuals from the university, and the one woman says to the master, "You're such a sophist," and the houseboy gets so offended for his master and thinks to himself, how dare she call him a sophist? Not knowing what a sophist
yeah, he has no idea what sophist is, but he's like, that sounds like an insult.
I have a question. While you're writing, do you actually live with the characters, thinking, oh, because while I'm reading it, if I go to, say, for example, extremely religious people's house, I'm like, oh, that's like can be. And actually, last week I was at people's house who don't have TV, who don't have outside world and stuff, and I was like, read this book, you know. But I was wondering if that's they actually live with you. Like, for example, the main character.
Yeah, well, Purple Hibiscus has been a while, and so I've sort of, I think I've let go. I mean, Purple Hibiscus is my baby, my first baby, right? But it's been a while, and only recently did I read a few pages of it, and I thought, oh, right, so I wrote that. Right, because I mean, I finished, this book came out in 2003, so I'd actually written it in maybe 2001, and, but I think Half of a Yellow Sun was so different in writing. Purple Hibiscus was just much easier to do, and it didn't take away from me as much as Half of a Yellow Sun. Half of a Yellow Sun just nearly killed me, really. It was such an emotionally tasking book to write, and I was so immersed in the characters and their lives that when